Can good design shape a better world? At Monocle's Quality of Life conference in Barcelona this September, we'll be putting that question to the people who already are. Join leading designers, architects, and creative leaders as we explore how design intersects with culture, business, and everyday life. Plus, great food, excellent company, and plenty of Catalan charm. Find out more and book your seat at monocle.com/conference.
This is Monocle on Design, a show where we discuss everything from architecture and craft to furniture and graphic design. I'm Nick Manise. On today's program, we review the Pictograms exhibition at Japan House in London. Plus, we remember the late, great Robert Wilson. And we'll also kick off the return of our summer series, highlighting design essentials for the season. All that coming up on Monocle on Design. Hello and welcome to today's program. I'm joined in the studio by Grace Charlton. Grace Charlton, what's going on? Hi.
Hi, I'm excited. We've also got Mei Liu behind the glass.
I do like to paint the picture of this, of like Mei Li in a glass box, trapped, listening to us.
I was going to say not trapped. She's got every possibility to leave if she wanted to, but you do look a bit like you're in an aquarium right now. And that's how I like it.
Like maybe we could get like some corals, some nice plants. I feel like actually, truly, if we took aquarium as inspiration, I feel like we could make the producer's studio look truly wonderful. Not that it doesn't look wonderful now, but maybe like a little bit more colour, a little bit more energy, maybe a shipwreck in the background. Moving away from the aquarium, as much as I would love to talk about. Actually, last thing on it, my first pet. We had, I guess not an aquarium, but we had like a little pond in the backyard where we got some goldfish, and within like 2 days, some ibises, we live right near a lake, had flown in and eaten them all. So it was just, you get so attached to these things, you name them, you feel a connection, and then Mother Nature does her thing. But that's why we got a dog that was a little bit harder for an ibis. Maltese poodle, still small, but a little bit harder for an ibis to take away. But that's not what this show is about. I'm going to throw to you, Grace. Why are all three of us in the studio right now?
We all had a bit of a team outing in London. So we went to Japan House on High Street, Kensington, which is one of my favourite places to go and mooch and maybe look at what I could get or request for Christmas or buy for my parents and get a matcha while you're there. It's an amazing building. It's funded by the Japanese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, so quite interesting cultural soft power.
But I think that is remarkable. I mean, you said you can go get a matcha. You can also go buy a matcha whisk. You can buy a heap of ceramics from across Japan. There's all sorts of products, soaps, sake, like comestibles through to things that you actually want to have in your home and will keep in your home for ages. And I think, we talk about, and we're going to dive into it, and we're going to talk about, I guess, the influence of Japanese design on the world at large, which is really where this Pictograms exhibition goes to. It pulls in all these different global influences. But what I do love is you said it's a Japanese soft power exercise. How remarkable that they have these Japan houses in several cities across the globe, and it's somewhere where you can go to firstly buy amazing Japanese design, but also, experience it and talk about it.
And the exhibitions are all free. There's a Japan House in Sao Paulo, which I think is quite interesting. Obviously, there's a big Japanese diaspora there.
It does make me wonder, it's like, is this why, I think when you think of countries with amazing design scenes, is this part of the reason why Japan always seems to jump to the front of our mind? Obviously, the design there itself is remarkable, but they're also making sure they're kind of spreading the message and telling their stories across the globe.
I actually don't know if I agree with that, because they can be a little bit
insular.
Insular. I don't want to dive into national character, but I find it surprising actually. I think they're quietly just maybe frustrated almost that the world is constantly coming to them. It must be annoying being at the top so consistently.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you're right. It has to be exhausting being everyone's benchmark, but that is the reason why we were all there. I mean, Mei Li, you were the first person to respond to the invite to this exhibition, so maybe you can set this up. To start, what's a pictogram?
It's, I guess, communicating through graphics, things that we take for granted. So if you think to signage you might see on the streets, so instead of having several words to communicate a danger, perhaps, you'll have maybe a certain shape or a figure to announce something that you might encounter. They're a much quicker way of communicating this information. If you imagine a can, a bottle, all those symbols to represent certain ingredients, or I guess whether there's an age restriction, a pictogram is a much more efficient way of letting someone know. And it crosses languages as well.
Japan House's Simon Wright had a really great explanation. So just building on what you were saying there, Mei Li, he said that an icon is representation, but a pictogram goes a little bit deeper. It has a little bit more, I guess, meaning embedded into it. And maybe the best example of a universally understood pictogram is that green icon with the white door of the person running through it. That means an exit sign. You could very easily just have a door there, but by including the person in this image and the motion implied by the way that that person's drawn, you're meant to run out through that door.
And I like the fact that it's got a real sense of urgency almost. Like if there's a fire, run. Like you don't want to read like this way, here please, like, you know, this way to the exit. It has to literally just be like, bam, instant understanding.
Exactly. And it's great that you said, you know, you don't want to have to read something there. They had this other brilliant example that was showing a pictogram versus a written explanation of what the pictogram's kind of trying to achieve. And you realise that this is just like a really succinct, a really clear way of communicating, which I think is beautiful.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting that Japan has perfected it, this form of graphic design, I guess you'd call it, in the 1964 Olympics in Tokyo, which was the first time that Olympics were being held outside of a country that uses the Latin alphabet. And so they sort of needed to convey the essence of a sport through a simple little pictogram. Genius.
No, it is. And this is coming back to that thing because, not to have a dig at the Italians here, but at the Rome Olympics in 1960, they had the sports written out 5 different times in like 5 different languages. If you don't speak those languages, you're also going to struggle to understand what that sport is. And I think that's what's so remarkable about it. But what I also like is that
At those 1964 games, artistic director Masaru Katsumi and graphic designer Yoshiro Yamashita, who led the team that designed the pictograms, they were kind of able to tap into this legacy of communicating with images.
you've got cave drawings that I guess were the first representations, not pictograms, but I guess icons trying to tell stories. Another great example they looked to was that following the First World War, this designer Otto Neurath and his wife worked on a series of symbols that were trying to point people in the direction of work or resources for people who had been displaced by the war and maybe were illiterate or didn't understand the language of the place that they were displaced to. And really what they did in 1964 in Tokyo was synthesize all this information, all this understanding into an amazing graphic representation of the games. And what's kind of beautiful is that the next time that the games were in Japan in 2021, it was the first time that they also introduced movement or this digital aspect to the pictograms. I don't know if you remember that, but they'd have like little people running and jumping and throwing water polo balls or javelins.
Yeah, I don't know if that technically counts as a pictogram if it can move. I sort of like the idea that it's frozen in the exact moment that, like I said before, like represents the essence in its most simple form. I think it's something that's really truly cross-cultural as well, which is its major appeal. After going to this exhibition, I think I'm going to be way more grateful for pictograms when I see them, especially when I'm traveling to a country where I don't speak the language. And I was also thinking that I'm really grateful for pictograms when I open a menu, and it's really easy to see which dishes are vegetarian when a little plant pictogram is next to the veggie option.
You said that you're not a fan of the moving. Does it go back to being a moving icon? I don't know. But like, can things just exist on their own, or do we have to constantly modernize them? Because you mentioned emojis there. Are they pictograms in a way?
I love emojis. I'm so pro emojis. I like it when they wiggle and they smile. So I don't even think it's necessarily like being against modernization. It's just if we're really talking about the practice or the art form of pictogram, I think maybe it's cheating a little bit.
And maybe it's not even modernization. It's just like recognizing that not everything needs to be put through a digital filter or a digital lens or like
remember when
AI-ified.
No, but remember when all the movies suddenly decided they needed to be in 3D? Not necessary. It was like a fun little trend, but
it gave me headaches. I never went.
Yeah, we like crawled back to sanity.
And maybe that's it. It's just like a little flirtation, and then it's done. And maybe animation, just because we can, isn't the way forward. I mean, Mei Li, how do you did you have a takeaway on how pictograms can kind of evolve or continue to develop?
I mean, perhaps one way the pictogram has been developed is in how it's being employed in specific circumstances. The Experience Japan pictograms, for example, which are featured in the exhibition. And this is a set of visual symbols that have been produced to help tourists to navigate and find particular types of food, cultural activities and places. We have a pictogram for the Tokyo Tower, for example, for sumo wrestling, for sake. And again, these are very, very specific to Japanese culture, but again, are very slick, are very modern, are instantly recognizable. But again, I don't think you could implement this in other cultures in the same way. So maybe it's thinking about, what is specific to this nation. There were some examples of some local school kids who are coming up with pictograms for London. My favourite being fish and chips, which was really beautifully rendered there. So maybe that's one way of thinking about how pictograms can evolve.
That's beautifully put and a nice way to round this out. Pictograms, Iconic Japanese Designs is on at London's Japan House until the 9th of November 2025.
It's the summer series. Monocle Designs Summer Essentials. Design Essentials.
We're joined now by Grace Charlton's favourite colleague, Grace Charlton, who's here.
We're joined by Fernando Augusto Pacheco, who's probably my favourite person to bump into at the coffee machine or something, because we can talk about perfumes, but also like visa experiences. But he's here on the show today to talk about his favourite summer designs. I couldn't think of a better person to talk about summertime.
You are we're going to let you get a word in eventually, Fernando. You're a sunny man. You're our senior correspondent, but responsible for the soundtracks of Monocle Radio, which, if you're tuning in beyond the show, very, very sunny and very summery right now. Is there a track of the summer or is it too early?
Well, you know what? It's been a bit of a struggle this year, song-wise, because there isn't one yet. And there's kind of one, but I don't like it, so I refuse to say the name.
Is it Addison?
It's not Addison, because I do like Addison, but the reality is the number one was a guy called Alex Warren, and the song's called Ordinary. It's a very ordinary track.
I know the one. I agree. I find it very
not for me. So I'm not.
Should be Addison Rae.
Love Addison Rae. Headphones on.
Summer Forever. That's the summer
Shall
song.
we say Addison Rae? She's the artist of the summer.
I think so. Look, you are the consummate professional. This was the perfect segue. Summer forever. If you could have summer forever, what are some of the essentials? Because that's what we're running over the course of this month. We're getting some of the team in, talking summer essentials. Those are key pieces of design that help them get through the season. Faye's come up with a scenario and curated his dream summer. Are we going beyond? We're going beyond objects.
There are objects in it, but my dream scenario, okay, close your eyes. I am by the beach. Okay?
Am I there? Grace is mainly there, or is it you're solo?
No, I'm not solo. I'm with you guys. We're in Rio de Janeiro, the Copacabana Palace, by the pool, or at a beach shack as well in Rio. So either.
We're just in Rio.
We're in Rio and we're by the beach. So what design I need at that moment with me? And the very first one, it does involve alcohol, and I'm sorry about that, but I become a little bit of a beer drinker during summer.
What?
Yes,
I thought you were going to
so.
say Speedos.
Well, there will be Speedos later.
Can you stop stepping on punchlines here? Let's just let it unfold.
But there's one interesting thing is, and I need my beer in a bottle, a 330 ml, in a glass bottle. And the reason why this is so important, because in Rio earlier this year, the mayor, he decided that it would be forbidden to actually buy a glass bottle by the beach. But there's been not quite protests, but the reaction was terrible. Everybody hated that idea, and he had to stop that law. So it never became true. I wrote a piece about it. I think that was the main reason.
I mean, this is it. Because you wrote a piece and it turned things... I mean, where are people putting their messages? Like, what happens when you get shipwrecked? No glass bottles. This is lowbrow.
We need glass. Forget about plastic cups or even if it's a nicer cup, forget about it. Just stick to the beer bottle in a glass, or glass, any drink in a glass. I think it's better. So I think that's good design for you guys. That's a start,
I think
right?
it is, and I think there's also the experience of holding it like that. I'm assuming the beer is ice cold. That hits your hand. That's also quite cooling. Sometimes with a little stub, like a little can of beer, it doesn't have that. I will say, actually, the one redeeming feature of a tinny is the fact that when you open it, you kind of get that nice... That also feels quite summery to me. I don't know, just as part of the soundtrack alongside.
I don't mind a tinny, but no plastic, okay? Can we kind of agree with that?
For sure.
And guys, the second thing is towel. I think a good towel is essential. And I'm not plugging any brands here, but I'm going to talk about my towel from a Brazilian brand called Trousseau. So they have a special line of beach towels, and it's so fluffy.
You have just plugged a brand up, though, just to be clear.
I did. It's fine, and I'm not getting paid.
But is there also something on dimensions as well? Because I think that's quite a big thing for me. I've kind of gone to these like 1.5 size towels, if that makes sense. Having something a little bit wider where you can comfortably put your book next to you, maybe, you know, a couple of ice cold beers in a glass bottle next to you. You've got some room to spread out and take up a little bit more real estate on the beach.
It needs to be big and fluffy, for sure, undeniably. And I think that's why they have the specific beach towel collection. But guys, I have some vintage ones, and not because I am the host of The Stack talking about print, but I have one that I bought from But magazine, you know, from the same publishers of Fantastic Man. It's a little bit saucy, so it's not for everyone, but maybe more magazines should, launch their own towels. Maybe Monocle had one in the past or something.
I'm sure we might have. I can picture it in my mind's eye.
A saucy one, Grace, perhaps?
I think I'm a real stripes girl. I love a simple stripe.
The one I have from Trousseau, it is a bit stripy. It's kind of white with kind of some yellow lines over it. Oh. Very nice. Love a good big and fluffy towel.
Faye, I'm really worried this is going to sound like a backhanded compliment, but your amazing partner, kind of big and fluffy. Yeah. Is that fair?
I'm a big fan of big and fluffy.
I mean, you just kind of want him to hold you and cuddle you. Like, big, powerful, strong man on a spicy beach towel. I don't really know where I'm going with this.
I love that, guys. I love big and fluffy. But shall we move on to the beach club?
I think we should move on.
I think we should move on to the beach club.
We need to move on.
But this one is interesting because I don't mind a very kind of chic beach club, with amazing cocktails. Of course, I'm not against that. And the thing is, there are terrible ones as well. I've been to one in Puglia recently. I'm not going to mention names. But they didn't have like a paper menu, and then they had, what's the name of that thing, the QR code?
No, but see, this is chaotic.
Horrendous.
This is chaotic. You've got like wet, sandy hands from the beach. You don't want to be playing around with your phone. You might not have reception because you're on international roaming and your data's not great. It's all these sorts of things. I'm 100% there with you. So what's the alternative?
The alternative is, I do like a very simple but kind of authentic beach shack. I remember my childhood in Brazil, so honestly, it wouldn't be perhaps covered here at Monocle. The design might not be the best, but there is a charm to it. I mean, talking about plastic, okay, the drink should have been plastic, but the chair is plastic. It's very simple. It's very Brazilian. There's something quite soulful about it as well, where you have some fried white fish with lime on top, your ice-cold beer in a glass bottle, so I don't mind that.
These monoblock chairs, they're by a Canadian designer called Douglas C. Simpson. They're kind of that kind of classic plastic molded chair. It's kind of got these it's got those really gentle curves. It's stackable. It's kind of got a perforated back with these. It almost looks like jets from a water fountain shooting up. Carved into the back seat of it. And there's something just delightfully tacky about it.
And it's everywhere, from the Balkans to Sao Paulo.
Yes.
To backyards in Perth, Western Australia. I mean, I feel like this is where my family's summer barbecues, this is what everyone was sitting on. And they become kind of as they age, they kind of get that weird, grainy kind of finish to them. And I don't know why that, for whatever reason, feels incredibly nostalgic.
Better texture, I would say, to sit down. It's less kind of more comfortable even. So
we're sitting on the monoblock chairs. We've rolled up our fluffy beach towel. We've got the ice cold beer in hand. Your partner Yannick sitting next to us. Conclude this beautiful image, this beautiful scene.
There are 3 things here that I wrote and I want to recommend to our listeners: a perfume, a magazine, and a swimwear. A quick roundup. Perfume. Mine would be Diptyque Citronella Geranium. I think it's perfect for the season. I think it's very gentle to others as well, and there will be no bites, no mosquito bites as well. Magazine. Forget about your indie title. I love indie titles. I'm the host of The Stack. But during summer, I love a good gossip magazine. The very cheap ones that you buy. And it's quite international because they're quite picture heavy. I love Voici from France. Hello, of course, in all its forms. So yeah, I'm all for gossip magazines during the summer.
Ooh, nice. I like finding a regional Vogue, and actually I bought one for Faye when I was in Montenegro. I found Vogue Adriatic, which was really fun. It had Sharon Stone on the cover, which is quite a get.
I mean, that's massive. I'm coming off the back of what you're saying now. I like to go and find the local newspaper, and I'm one of the few Monocle staff that is English only, that's all I can handle. So if you did see me on a beach in Croatian newspaper, know that I'm just kind of looking at the pictures. But what I like about doing that is you kind of do get a little bit of a feel or a little bit of a sense for, I guess, what's going on in a place. And this is a habit I picked up from my dad, which is full credit to him. Everywhere we go, we'd find kind of obscure exhibitions to go to that he would just pick up from the local rags. That's what I'm going with. I'm leaving the magazines. I've picked up some free ones at the airport. They're staying in the hotel room with me on the beach, newspaper.
I love it. And guys, final one, we have to talk about swimwear. I've been talking all over the radio about this, but Speedos are back, and I have 5 pair of Speedos. I mean, probably 10, like swimwear or kind of whatever you call sungas, as we call in Brazil, but from the Speedo brand, I have 5, including the canary yellow, that I think is a very special one.
You're saying that they're back, but I don't think they ever left.
They never left, but I think there's a new type of man that is consuming Speedos in 2025. So it kind of added another layer of man, especially the more conservative ones that perhaps were avoiding.
Maybe Nick Mini.
I've spent large portions of my life in Speedos. Water polo, surf life-saving. Very quickly you learn it is actually the most amazing way to swim, short of being nude, but let's not get into that. I think there's a certain freedom to it that it affords you, obviously amazing tan lines. But I'm curious, I want to kind of unpick, actually also shocking tan lines, depending on how you want to look at this. But I want to unpick the new man. Who is this new gentleman that's going to be wearing a Speedo?
I think Speedo, first of all, the brand, they're becoming quite smart about it, because the traditional Speedos, they're quite tight. They're more for athletes, for swimmers. But they changed, they did little tweaks in the design, so it's actually not that tight anymore. It's very short, it's the Speedo you can imagine, but it's a different fabric, so you can actually wear it at the beach and feel quite comfortable as well. So before, you imagine an elderly Italian gentleman or a Brazilian or an Aussie, wearing them. But I think now it's going big in markets like the US. I think American men in general, they're more traditional the way they wear the swimwear. But now it's not anymore. I kind of entered the mainstream. So I think that's what I meant, that there's a new type of man consuming Speedos, if I think so.
I feel like I need to dig mine back up, but I'm worried there'll be miscommunication by saying surf lifesaver, and I'm certainly not equipped to rescue anyone at the moment. Bather of choice?
Always, always, always a black triangle bikini. Always. You can't go wrong. I found one at COS this summer, which is very Elia inspired. It has like a little silver jewel at the front and a little pearl detail as well, which is a bit chic.
Oh my God, all of this is making me want to go swimming. I really, really want to go swimming. Fernando Augusto Pacheco,
Thank you for taking us into your summer universe.
It's the summer series. Monocle Design's Summer Essentials. Design Essentials.
US playwright and stage director Robert Wilson had the most impressive CV. He was a sound designer, a choreographer, a visual artist. He passed away this week, and we've covered him previously in print for Monocle. But, I mean, his work, I feel, very much up our alley at Monocle on design. I'm going to throw to Mei Lee now, who brought it to the table. Mei Lee, tell us a little bit about Robert Wilson and what appealed to you about his work.
So yeah, Robert Wilson, as you've mentioned, is just like a figure who crosses so many disciplines. I think artist feels like the one that covers everything. But for me, I studied theatre and film, but found my way into design through doing set, lighting, sound. And this was someone whose name kept popping up, no matter what discipline. He's one of those makers whose work is really appreciated in the design world. For example, he was part of Salon del Mobile this year, had an installation on in conversation with the Michelangelo sculpture, and, has also been recognised with the Golden Lion at the Venice Biennale for some sculpture he did himself in 1993. So this is someone who is really at the forefront and recognised in the design world. But I think what's really beautiful about the way he kind of moves from theatre into design and makes that barrier between them very porous is his approach to light. So we're just going to hear a quick clip of him when he was speaking at a masterclass earlier this year.
My first day in architectural school, Louis Kahn spoke, and he said, "Students, start with light." That had a profound influence on me. Whatever we do, if it's designing a building, designing an exhibition, we need light, and to balance light with darkness. Light is essential in construction of time and space.
Robert Wilson, or Bob Wilson as he was affectionately known, speaking at the Euroluce International Lighting Forum earlier this year. Maybe for a bit of context, for someone who has worked in theatre, the way that often the process works is you have a script, you have actors in a room, and the technical elements like lighting and sound, you have maybe a day or two to run through all the cues and plot it in place. But his approach was, what if we start with the visual? What if we make sure light is at the start of that process? And that is something just as integral as the script, which is often put front and centre in certain theatrical traditions. It's such a simple but really important thing to think about, and just something that I really hope people remember about his work.
I mean, that's, I guess, a beautiful way of, explaining what made Robert Wilson's practice so distinct. It was completely turning the way that we might operate on its head. But I also kind of want to contextualise it, maybe first from a performance perspective. I know you, Mei-Li, and Grace both have histories as performers, as stage artists of a kind. Grace, when you were a world champion tap dancer. What?
Why are you laughing?
Well, it's amazingly obscure. It's kind of like winning the gold medal for walking at the Olympics. It's like, what sort of competition pool is there really? No, you're a world-class tap dancer, just to reiterate that point. But what role would staging and lighting play in, a performance ultimately? How did it shape what you were doing as a dancer?
I think light is...
As a world-class dancer.
As a world champion dancer, you don't really have any say on the set design. You just have to walk up on an empty stage and face your demons. And the light will always be extremely bright. So that means you have to wear extremely garish makeup to counter it. But I think that is the power of light, and it can set a mood, be it in your homes or on a stage. And I think that's why Robert Wilson, or Bob Wilson, was so special in conveying and creating, almost creating narrative through light. He's also quoted, Tadao Ando and Louis Kahn, as you mentioned there. This idea of starting with light and seeing how you can play with that, change its temperature, change its intensity to create a very different mood and to encourage a certain reading of a place. But there was also a point that he made that I also really liked, was this idea of work being unfinished. In theatre, you are greeting an audience, you are setting a scene. The audience is just as integral in reading and interpreting that. And I think that's something that we can take into the design world, and understanding that the user, the audience that you are producing a scheme or an object for, they are just as integral to the process. This user is going to have that relationship, and it's going to be living and breathing. It's not finished until someone experiences it and then takes it, and then they'll keep on experiencing it. I know what you mean. So
much of his work can be looked at through an architectural lens, and it's these spaces, I guess, that people create don't really matter until they're inhabited. It's all well and good to have this amazing set of drawings, but if the lighting's not right and people don't want to spend time in it, then has the architecture served its purpose? The other thing that's quite fascinating to me is that if we're talking about light and sound, these are things that don't have physical, tangible forms. They're the sort of things that can envelop us, that can, you mentioned mood there, Mei-Li. They're the sorts of things that can very quickly and very dramatically change our reading of a space in a way I think that materials don't necessarily, and even forms can't necessarily do. We're sitting in a studio right now, have this really brightly lit. It feels like it's appropriate for a podcast. If you're recording a moody blues album in here, you're going to bring the lights right down. The physical space is the exact same, but the ability for light to so quickly dictate mood, I think, is what makes it. And that's why people are drawn to somebody like Robert Wilson, somebody who is able to master something that can have such a profound impact on our experience of space. And I think for me, if we're jumping off stage, it does make you think, how am I lighting, how am I picking the soundtracks to the spaces that I live in, that I inhabit, that are going to help tell the stories that I want to tell? I guess to round out Robert Wilson, what is so beautiful is we're talking about light and sound. We're talking about, I don't want to call them disciplines, but we're talking about, I guess, two different elements that he worked with. But he also worked with stage design, choreography, visual art. If we're talking legacy, we'd be remiss not to talk about the Watermill Centre in New York, outside the city. This was a space he called a laboratory for creative thinking, where he provided a space and a platform for people from a host of different creative disciplines to come together. And if I can, I'd like to finish with a quote that Robert gave Monocle, and it was, 5,000 years from now, if anything from our time remains, it will be artefacts and architecture. The most pressing current affairs right now will be small footnotes in history, but art and culture are things that last. And I just think that was so beautiful.
And maybe we use that quote as a jumping off point to wrap up today's show. If art and culture is going to last, if set design for theatre and film is going to last, I want to ask you both, and it's maybe a little bit silly here, but what set design would you love to inhabit for the rest of your life? Where would you almost like to be stuck?
Or I have to be quite obvious as a young woman. I would live in a Sofia Coppola movie if I could. Like just lots of trinkets everywhere, lots of doilies, like just lace, curtains and pink and satin and ribbon. I would live in that world. What about you, Nick?
So to be clear, it's only in the film world because I can't stand it when people talk about Wes Anderson's spaces in the real world. But I would just love to be in the bizarre, colourful, fun, absurd world of Wes Anderson. As long as I'm inside the screen, I'm in your television, I'm in your computer monitor.
And there's no escape.
Speaking of being behind, in this case, a glass screen, Mei Lee, where are you inhabiting? Where are you living?
Well, I've gone from one glass box to another. I've just been looking at the apartment in Alfred Hitchcock's Rope, which is this beautiful apartment with this window that just glides up and over at a curve. So for that window alone, I'm sold.
That's all for today's show. For more design stories, listen to our 5-minute midweek bonus show, Monocle on Design Extra, which airs on Thursdays. And if you enjoy print, then do pick up a copy of Monocle magazine as well. Grace, maybe a quick highlight from the current issue. What's something you've worked on in the July-August edition of Monocle magazine?
I wrote a story about Roman fashion, which is quite fun. We did lots of running around on the streets and sweating.
There you go, maybe inspiring us to spend some time in Rome this summer. Today's episode was produced and edited by Mei Lee Evans with editing help from Hunter Wang. It was co-hosted by Grace Charlton. I'm Nick Manise. Thanks for listening.